Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News podcast. Today's show is brought to you by W3C Web Services, and I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 26, and we're recording this on Monday, October 26th, 2020. Each week, we cover and discuss the productivity news headlines of the week. And to do that, we have two panelists with us today to talk about all things in personal productivity and technology. First up, we have Julie Bestry. She is a certified professional organizer in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Welcome to Anything But Idle, Julie.
Hi, guys.
Hey there.
Happy
All right.
to be here.
Great to have you. And then next up, we have Penny Zenker. Penny Zenker is a focusologist, international speaker, business strategy coach, and best-selling author. And Penny's book, The Productivity Zone, was an instant Amazon bestseller, and her TEDx talk, The Energy of Thought, has gained attention around the world. And so with that, I'm going to bring Penny on. Welcome, Penny.
Boo.
So as you all can tell, we are theming this week's episode for the Halloween holiday, and so we are here in honor of that. And what I thought we would do just to start out the show, a little pre-show. So welcome all who are watching live. Those of you who are listening to us, some of us are in costume just for some fun. And what I thought we'd start out with is just a little bit of Halloween productivity discussion, like. Penny, you probably have more experiences with than I do in terms of like, how do you keep everybody costumed up? How do you help the kids organize in that sense to make sure that like Halloween is as efficient as possible? Because there's like candy to get, and there's decorating, and there's Halloween costumes. Like, what are some tips that you might have for folks who want to get ready for that?
Well, it's all about having fun, right? So productivity in this case is making it fun. So, I involve my kids and get them excited and plan ahead, just like we do with everything. It's, hey, what are you going to be? What kind of candy do we want to give out? And so that makes it more fun to rev up and get excited and get the house decorated. So we definitely start ahead of time, get our plan together, and just get everybody excited and bring that positive energy into getting it all together and putting stuff out and getting dressed and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I know that for me, what I've done in years past is I buy costumes in like multiples, that I know which costumes work for me, and I just keep a like a rolling number of costumes that I know will always work. And then when I need to, it's just sitting in the closet ready to go, and I yank it out, and voila, I'm Spock with ears even.
Good
Augusto,
strategy.
yeah, right. Augusto, any thoughts over there, Anakin?
Like any progress, we are building the Death Star, and the Death Star has been a long process to build. Same with our Halloween decorations. And the good news being Darth Vader is that I get an unlimited supply of candy. Okay, not unlimited, but plenty of that.
And so for those who are listening, just note that I am dressed up as Spock from Star Trek. Augusto is dressed up as Darth Vader, or some semblance of Darth
No,
Vader.
no. It's Anakin after he lost the helmet and he's going to die at the end of the show. That's the goal.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. I wanted us to have a little bit of fun before we got into our stories of the week. And so, as you all know, we cover the stories of the week. Then we go into the science of productivity. Matt Plummer from Zervana has provided us with the science of productivity segment. Then we will go into new tools of the week, and then we'll close out with the featured story this week. And just as a teaser, it's all about Microsoft 10 and Chrome OS, and we're very excited about the future of that. So let's get into the stories of the week. So first up is a story about YouTube and the YouTube music platform. So those of you who do not know, Google has deprecated and is sunsetting the Google Play Music platform. It is now no longer available, and you must either download your music library and also, if you want to, transfer to YouTube Music. And I just wanted to let everybody know that there is a YouTube Music uploader that's on GitHub. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And it allows you to have this running application on your in this case Windows machine that can go ahead and bulk upload music to YouTube Music. So just so you all know that it's available there, and it's happening. Google, Augusto, Anakin, whatever. What's our next story this week?
Our next, you see, this is great because he cannot tell me that I'm mute because he cannot see my mouth talking. That is fantastic. So our next story is Apple release 14.1 software for the HomePod, the intercoms, and everything else for the HomePod Mini, as well as the old HomePod. So now you can set up all the intercom and communication and all that. And there is a rumor that the 14.2 will allow you even to set up your iPhone and watch as part of this ecosystem. So that was something that they did not announce, but it's going to be really fun for the people who enjoy that, even if you decide not to have a HomePod for now.
Wonderful, wonderful. And with that, what's
We
our
are
next
going
story?
to MTV. I'm sorry, Apple Music TV. Apple Music TV, it's going to be 24-hour stream of music videos, shows, and events. And somehow that brings me back to the 90s where we talk about MTV and all that. That's what I thought when I saw that first news coming into it. But it's coming. It's going to be 24 hours music nonstop, all stream into your TV.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, we have just a couple other items, and then we'll get to our first real story that I wanted to discuss this today, and that is that Google Sheets has added a smart fill feature. And for those of you who are kind of unaware, Google Sheets is actually far more powerful than most people really are aware of. And it's important to recognize that if you are putting data into Google Sheets, it's able to actually read the data, go figure, but more importantly than that, it is actually capable of providing you with natural language question and answer. So if you put data in correctly, it then is able to slice and dice that data and then provide natural language answers. So you can say, if you put in data for something and say, oh, well, how many people have a red color shirt? If the data is structured properly, you can actually get Google to just answer that by asking those types of questions. And so what Google has done here is they have provided this really interesting new feature called Smart Fill. And I'm putting this on screen here so that folks watching can see this. But in essence, if you watch what the little GIF or GIF, however you pronounce it, shows you, you can see here that now what Smart Fill does is it allows you to be able to put content in, and then Google basically starts to analyze what data you're putting in and starts guessing at the type of data that needs to be filled in. So you can see there that it's extracting data from different fields and then smart filling that data in for users as they type it in. It just cuts down both keystrokes as well as increasing efficiency by being able to add this data into the system. Very, very powerful, and I'm really looking forward to using it myself. So just so everybody is aware that that is now available. So very cool stuff there. Okay, we are now on to what I wanted to kind of first throw out there. There was a Fast Company article that came out that talked about, and the title of the article is "Forget Time Management, Master This to Meet All Your Productivity Goals." And this was by Sarah Goff Dupont Atlassian, and I thought my name was a mouthful, but she talks about this notion of attention management. And I just want to give kind of the very rough edges here so that we can have a discussion about it. But she really talks about why attention management matters for teams, both for the ability for people to focus on big goals, right? The why of the organization, ruthless prioritization, and compassionate declination of things that you do turn down. There's a little bit of discussion about objectives and key results, which is the OKRs framework that Google kind of opened up. They also talk about the all the things prioritization matrix that Atlassian, the folks who produced Jira and Trello and otherwise Confluence, developed, which is also really interesting. And then fostering a focus-friendly team culture. And so my question for everybody here is really, is attention management the new version of time management today? I'll say this, which is that we went from goal management from, say, the Covey era, at least in my day, to then task or action management with David Allen and getting things done. And now it sounds like folks are trying to challenge time management again with this notion of focus or attention management. And what are your thoughts there about the whole idea that time management is now passé and we should be really focusing on attention management? Go for it. Just jump in. Yeah. You're muted for some reason. I'm not hearing you. So Penny, if you want to get started, and then Julie, if you want to go ahead and troubleshoot, and we'll figure that out.
Sure. I think that, I think that we've come to the terminology to attention management because of the great deal of distractions that we have. And so it's really identifying that we are so distracted. We're checking our phones 150 times a day just to check our emails and text messages, that we want to bring people's focus back to presence, right? I mean, that's really what that is. Attention management is being present and being purposeful about what you're giving your attention to. So I think that it makes sense to get people redirected into what's most important, and to give it the, without saying the word again, attention, to bring that focus into place and be present and purposeful about what you're doing.
Ray, I think can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Okay. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. I completely agree with Penny. I think a lot of this is a matter of semantics. Early time management, all the way through 20th century, early 21st century, was about getting stuff done, looking at the calendar, trying to squish in, get everything you're done. But the underlying realization had to be, or should have been, that it's what you give the most of your time, effort, money, attention, love to is what is going to get accomplished. And so I think by whether we're looking at individuals or we're getting a little touchy-feely by doing it with teams, we have to talk about the fact that what we prioritize is by nature what we are giving all of our effort to. So I love the fact that this article started with the idea of focus on your why, because, in that very Simon Sinek sort of way, if you have a sense of your why, you know what your end goal is, the purpose for which you are doing all of this, you're going to be more inspired to invest all of your time management skills into this intentionality, this prioritization for the attention focused skills. So it's all sort of the same thing with a little more of the meta realization of the purpose of why you're doing everything beyond the paycheck or, not getting yelled at.
I'm gonna push back a little bit. I'm gonna give the devil's advocate view here, which is that I think it's going back to all the things priority matrix. It's kind of all the things. I think that time management is not supplanted by attention management, but it's more the fact that we need to find balance among all of those pieces. For me, for example, I don't think of attention as being the same as goal orientation. So this idea of putting attention on something is really the in the moment faculty that we use to be able to attend to something, right? That is our mental ability to focus. But focus is more of a goal orientation feature. And again, we're talking semantics here, but if we see those two different facilities that we have, we then have the issue of goal orientation is not bad, and prioritization is not bad, and time management is not necessarily bad, because you can poorly manage your time. And we also need the ability to manage energy so that our performance is at a high level, which is really a skills management issue. And we need to, it's like each of these layers of things are kind of like all of them together create a supporting infrastructure that makes us productive. And so I argue that the point of replacing one with the other is not really the goal. It's really about meshing together the different strategies that each unique one of us applies to make ourselves more productive.
And I think that's one of the big difference. When you go from the Covey school, to the David Allen School, there was a radical change. There was a really distinction. Yeah, we can argue, but Covey went one way, David Allen went the opposite way. This seems a lot more as a complement, as pieces that will make your practice stronger than something radically different than what we have seen, on the Covey GTD Air moment.
Yeah, and so Art is noting, he's asking here for us, can time and attention management be complementary? Can they be forces that work with each other? What are your thoughts to that? Obviously, my answer was yes.
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, I think they're different things. And maybe each time era is identifying what the biggest challenge is and helping people to get that. Because for me, it's all about aligning your goals, your actions to get the result that you want, right? So the question is, you're going to need time management activities in order to do that, and what it is that you decide to prioritize and give, and what's getting done, and also how you show up for that in your attention. But I think attention has one other thing that we didn't get to talk about that, well, actually we did. Julie, you mentioned it in terms of the why, but I would say attention creates connection. And I believe that part of the reason we're so distracted is because we're so disconnected to what's really important. And, social media just makes that disconnection worse, even though it might appear that it's making it better. Our phones, all this technology is making us more disconnected. So I think it's addressing the core problem, so to speak, is, okay, we know how to set goals more or less, and we're not giving it up, but we're telling people that this is the thing to give some thought to, is to really be present and align those together to get the result that you want.
I think they dovetail. Your time and attention management, I think when we were all in the workplace, I mean, not just before the pandemic, but back when everybody was in a building with their fellow workers before work from home was much of a thing at all. So go back even 20 years ago. Even though you were surrounded by humanity, there wasn't this ADD-like atmosphere. Whereas now, everything, it's not just the people you work with and the people, and the robocallers, and if your children are at home, but as Penny said, there's social media, and not just the existence of social media and the messages on social media, but for anybody who isn't really, really good at turning off every notification, it's the notifications and the interruptions from social media. So our attention is bifurcated in a way that it never was before. And that has been magnified in the last 8 months. And so it is our time management. I mean, I think we all went into this thinking, oh, well, I've got 8 months where I have all these months where I don't have a commute and I don't have all of these distractions, so I can focus all of my attention. So when I'm not doing work, I can write that great American novel, or I can redecorate my home. And people aren't accomplishing those things by and large because everything has been magnified. So being able to manage our time requires us to be able to manage our attention. So I think they're not just complementary. I think they dovetail, and they're almost inextricably woven together. They're like a Triscuit.
So Art is asking here, does working remotely change how we need to manage our attention? Does it make it easier or harder? And Julie, you kind of noted that a little bit in your comments. So Art, let me know if Julie's comments answered that, or whether you had further thoughts. Penny, did you have any further thoughts on that?
Does working remotely change how we manage and need to manage our attention? I think it does, because working remotely also includes a lot of uncertainty, right? This whole environment and why we're at home is that emotional factor that's included in there, right? So there are different distractions. Now, instead of being the got-a-minute meeting at the office, people are having to be present on different chat platforms and maybe being bombarded by more email than ever because they used to be handled in different ways. So communication is coming in different forms. They've got all this stress and uncertainty. So, I do think that it requires that much more, I keep wanting to use that word, attention. It's so annoying that I keep coming back to that word. But that it's definitely something that we need to tune into, that it's different. Just because what we were doing before was for a different environment, it was for a different context. And so we do need to step back and reevaluate, in my opinion, how we get our attention and what it is we do to block out distractions and how we manage the stress levels that we have.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have to move along. Go ahead, Augusto.
Oh, before you move along, finally I got a quiet time. You guys cannot see my face because of the mask, but this has been a great moment for that question of did the remotely change? And yes, but it's not necessarily the remotely. It's what changed when the remote happened. I've been working remotely for the last 9 years. So this was my turf, okay? When all this thing happened, what happened was I got 3 roommates, okay? That has never been remote. And as I said at the beginning of this pandemic, when you set up everything for you, yes, remote works incredibly well. But my wife, my 2 kids are coming to an environment that is completely new for them. They've never been remote. My kids have never been virtual students. My wife has never worked remote. So some of the things people who work remote learn, many, many years ago, most people has been learning the last 6 months. And for good or for bad, there is a learning curve into what and how you manage your attention and what you do and what you can predict to avoid, those bazillion of emails when you work remotely. So a lot of people, it's in the beginning stages of that training. And I hope that over time, they will see the benefits of that and they will learn the ways to keep some of that, in check, so that way it works better for them.
Absolutely. All right, moving right along, we have an article out of Todoist. Todoist published a blog post recently that talked about connecting Todoist and Twist, which is their business project management tool, with all your favorite tools. And I just wanted to spend a moment to let folks kind of know that both Todoist as well as Twist allow you to integrate with a wide variety of tools in 6 different categories on the Todoist side, and I think 5 different categories on the Twist side. And so some of the favorite ones are integrating with Alexa and Slack and Toggle Track, which is a favorite tool of mine, Google Assistant, and so on and so forth. So if you, for some reason, feel like Todoist is not giving you all the functions you need, then look at the various email, time tracking, communication, planning, productivity, and automation integrations that Todoist provides. And then on the Twist side, I don't know how many users are in the Twist environment, but those businesses that are using Twist as their project management tool, they have communication, planning, file management, and automation tools. And it looks like they have roughly about 18 tools, maybe 17 tools that work with them, including Zapier. So if you can't make something happen with one of these direct integrations, Zapier opens up the world to a much larger space in that world. Okay, so next up, we have an article that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and this was all about a note-taking method that someone wrote about on the Forge Medium account, and it was called A Better Note-Taking System for Your Scattered Brain, and it's called 4 Mind Banks, and to basically help you process information in a simple, engaging way. This is by Aria Tagulinow. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Either way, just as a quick run through, this person was trying to find a better way to take meeting notes, and they had tried the bullet journal system and seemingly wanted something perhaps simpler. And so during meetings, she, I believe, realized that 4 things were happening in her mind. 1, she was gaining new information. She was coming across things she wanted to gain further clarity on or dig deeper on. She was coming up with ideas and insights, and she was having strong feelings, strong emotions about particular things that came up in the meeting. And so she came up with these 4 different quote unquote banks that she has identified: the minutes bank, the question bank, the idea bank, and the reaction bank. In essence, 4 buckets to contain these 4 types of thought that she was having. And she posits that this could be useful to others. And I was just curious about your reaction to that idea of having these 4 different categories in your meeting notes.
I think it's interesting. The first thing that came up to me was mind mapping, is that I could see that that would be something that would fit well into a mind mapping situation with the meeting, and then having the offshoots being those areas, because you want a place to capture ideas. You want a place to capture questions that you might have. So I think it's a clever way to structure your thoughts. And I think that I find for me that I naturally look to do that. Otherwise, my notes are all over the place. And so that's why I mind map, is to look to structure things in that way. So I think that this could be a useful way for people to process a meeting and be able to then share different parts of it as necessary.
I agree. I think that one of the things that I tend to separate is form and function. I think where referenced in that story about maybe having tabs in a notebook and flipping back and forward, I think that might be a down the road approach. But if you're in a meeting and you hear something that you don't understand and you try and make that note in one part of your notebook, and then right after that there's something you want to follow up on and something that gives you a brilliant idea for boosting forward, it's a lot of flipping around. I think that for people who are willing to make the effort to then sit down with their notes and review them after the meeting and then transfer that information, I think that makes sense. But when you're talking about on the go, I think that's what the margin of your paper is for. That's one of the reasons why I think it's great to take handwritten notes rather than type things. Research shows that if you transcribe things in notes, if you're in a class, you're in a meeting, and you type what you're hearing, you tend not to think about it with context. You just sort of act as a transcriptionist. I think there's a method of note-taking called Cornell note-taking that I went to Cornell, so they taught it there, but it's sort of a widespread thing. But one of the important things they talk about there is using the bottom of your paper and definitely the margins. And I think you could incorporate all of these 4 these sort of banks that they're talking about: the minutes, the question bank, the ideas, and the reactions. But I think many people get overwhelmed by any sort of methodology for gathering things. So I think what Penny said, the mind mapping is a great way to gather it all in one place, using the margins, using symbols, kind of like the bullet journal symbols to help you tell what is going to prompt you, and then maybe transcribing that over later to a more organized system, because your inputs are going to determine your outputs. And if you're overwhelmed in a meeting, or like in the first week on a new job and you're just running around like a duckling after the person above you trying to get all of this down, you don't want to be overwhelmed by trying to put everything in the right spot as you're running down the hallway doing a walk and talk.
Yeah, and as the guy who lives on the iPad, that's what I have, and you cannot see it on the camera, but it's basically I take all my notes on the iPad using the Apple Pencil, and I use the Cornell method to keep the border, to make those annotations over the year. These are actions, these are things, these are questions that I have, and bring them there, at least make the line that way. With the iPad now, it's even easier because I can even highlight in colors and continue really in seconds. And with the iPad, now with iOS 14, I can even select it and say, turn this into type text, and it will turn, for the people who has good handwriting, much better than for me, but that's because my handwriting, it's terrible. Mm-hmm. But even with my awful handwriting, it does a really, really decent job on what I need to fix. So If you have an even better handwriting than me, you will get it almost 100%. But I think it's really important what you said, and this is what I love about doing it this way versus using OneNote or Evernote. The attention that I give and the thinking process, it is different. And what I have been reading is a matter of speed. I can type much faster than I can handwrite or decently handwrite. So that make my brain engage a lot more with what I'm listening. So I can do it while typing. I can do it almost unconscious. So for people who have that issue, then they will get that advantage too. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think Art notes here in the comments about using tagging, and I think absolutely if you're using this in a digital environment, I think that tagging is definitely a way to manage these pieces. My quandary with this whole methodology is what Art is noting here. He says that I always want to know what is the benefit that will be derived from the methodology to the immediate and long-term use of the notes. And for me, the missing element here is that if we have kind of the minutes and then questions and then ideas and reactions, we're missing kind of the actions, the projects, and the who of what's going to actually happen in the environment. And that's the part that kind of confuses me about this, because I want to get out of it what is going on in that environment.
So it's interesting. I kind of assumed that in the minutes you'd have all of those items. So, and I didn't read the article in full, but so I think that if the minutes covered some of those, the action items that came out of the minutes and so forth, I think it's great to have a place where you can capture those questions and maybe they can be shared. So I think there's, like any methodology, right? It depends on how you implement it. Like for me, I agree with you, Julie, if I have to flip around a lot, that's not going to work. But if I can fit it all onto one page on that mind map, I actually like the fact that as I'm following someone around, I could dump a question directly into the question category. It helps me to place things. So I think it may also depend on the type of thinker that somebody is as to how their note-taking works best for them. But I believe some structure, whatever methodology, is better than no structure and then having to go through and figure out what the heck you wrote down and then put it into structure. That takes a lot more time and effort.
And I think you make a great point that is also will depend on how you think and what you enjoy. For me, technology comes naturally. I'm so comfortable with the technology, but not everybody is. So if you are not comfortable with that, can you train and be? Yes. But don't try because that works great. The mind map worked great for Penny. Now say tomorrow morning, go and try the mind map. If that doesn't come to you, and it's not going to match naturally, don't even waste your time. Get your traditional notebook and do it there. I've been using colors for years, okay? I mean, my desk is full of colors because I like colors, but that's me. There is people who will, and Julie too, yay, okay? But not everybody will enjoy the colors, okay?
That's funny. If I get a spreadsheet that's got a ton of colors on it, it drives me insane.
I like relatively few colors if it's digital, but if it's analog, I want it to be colorful.
Okay.
I guess it's just the way our individual mind works. And I just want to circle back to what Ray was asking about, because I perceived pretty much like, I'm getting an echo. Ray got it. I perceived that the minutes were the actual meeting experience. And so all of those takeaways, those who's going to be assigned which tasks, I perceived that as what was going to be going on in those minutes. That was sort of the traditional note-taking experience in the minutes. And then the question bank, the idea and the reactions I perceived as the extracurricular activity of what was being created in these banks. I also, to get back to what Art was asking about, I perceive this as a relatively short-term system. By the time you get to the end of your week and you have gone back, it's almost kind of a GTD sort of thing that I perceive that you're at the end of your day or the end of your week, you are reviewing all of your notes. You're seeing what questions, what things remain to be dealt with. I don't see this as a long-term archiving system. And maybe that was just my perception, but Penny's nodding, so I guess, yeah.
Okay, I want to move us right along to our next topic, which is an article that came out of Rolling Stone, a magazine of all things. And the article was called "Get It Done: The Best Productivity Planners for Organizing Your Goals." And they came up with 4 different planners that they offered that were on the market. And I'm going to run through these, and then I just want to hear your general thoughts in terms of physical planners, because I'm sure that you have opinions about physical planners. So the 4 planners they noted were the Panda planner, and that wasn't the first one. They actually offered up number 1 as the Clever Fox Planner Pro, which is an A5 sized planner that has a 12-month structure. And it also helps you identify short and long-term goals. There's a 50-dot grid page section in the back, and it's got an inner pocket. The next one is the Panda Planner Venture, which is all for entrepreneurs, and it helps them identify the company's goals and steps in order to get to that success. And this is a part of Panda Planner generally, which is a larger series of them. And this Panda Planner Venture has weekly, monthly, and quarterly review sections in them. And then there's the Legend Planner. I'd never heard of this one before, so this was new to me, but the Legend Planner is some kind of life planner that helps you set up 12 months of goals. It's also in an A5 size and has weekly, quarterly, and yearly goals with daily schedules and a calendar layout, so you can kind of identify strategies and routines in that process. And then last, they bring up the 5-minute journal, which is a daily practice of gratitude type journal where you can go ahead and keep your items in there. It's a linen cover. It's 8.3 inches by 5.3 inches, so kind of the reverse of an A5, so to speak, but it fits in a pocket really easily. So they offer these 4 different planners. Do you think they got it right? Did they offer the best ones on the market? I see Julie shaking her head no.
I felt like Ray picked this particular story because this is my bailiwick, because I blog as the Paper Doll. One of my favorite time and organization blends is to talk about paper planners. And I was a Franklin Covey girl for a long time. I understand a lot of people are thinking digitally, and yay. But if you're talking a paper planner, you're going to be probably one of 2 people. Either you really like it pretty, or you really like it easily functional. And most of these planners pick one versus the other. So I decided as an experiment going into 2020 that I wasn't going to use, after 20 years, my Franklin Covey planner. And I looked at every single planner on the market. And so and there are probably about another 6 more that are at least as popular as the ones that Rolling Stone picked. The Panda Planner and the Clever Fox. For some reason, people are very into animals right now with these. They're very pretty. There are little sections, and you get to flip around in them. But the truth is that most people are already feeling overwhelmed by all of the tasks they have to perform. And I think what you end up with is almost a fear that when you're writing, even with your nicest pen in your brand new clean planner, there is a fear of screwing up. I see this with my clients all the time, that there's this anxiety over what they're putting in their planners. So I'm going to say they got it wrong, because the planner they want is Planner Pads. Planner Pads is very simple. It is a funnel-shaped, sort of V-shaped planner where you get category sections at the top, and there are to-do sections in the middle. At the bottom is your actual calendar, and everything flows downward. And it is ideal for dealing with your short-term goals and your long-term goals. And it's a way of almost sifting the sand out of of your sandbox to get down to just the big rocks and make sure that you're going to handle the most important things, but that everything is visible. You don't have to keep flipping around, because in any given week, you're able to see that, thank you very much. And so I'm going to say planner pad for people who really want to track their goals, who are having trouble with time management, who can live with the fact that the page from week to week is not super pretty. No offense, that's just not particularly pretty. And the one last thing that I want to say is they talked about the calendar format, your business versus personal goals, and the size of the planner you pick, but they forgot to talk about the format of your planner. And that's, where are you going to find what you need? Because if your goals are 50 pages back in a, in a dot point or in lines or anything, if you have to search for your goals, you're not going to be reminded of your goals, and you're going to focus just on your to-dos, and there's not that integration, no Triscuit that we were talking about. So, and I'm not in the pocket of big planner pad, but but that's what I have to say on my favorite topic of everything you picked today, Ray.
Wonderful. So Art is asking the question, can the planner be used as a way to mitigate that fear of ruining the pristine piece of paper with the information you feel maybe isn't worthy?
I think that's what's great about planner pad, because it's not fancy. It doesn't look very much different from, back in the days when you'd go to the dentist and they would write your next appointment on that long column planner that would give them their whole year at a time. It's very workmanlike. So you're not going to feel like you can make a boo-boo, because it's just not that fancy. It's like if you've ever gone to someone's house when they've just redecorated and you're afraid to like drink your coffee in the room with the white carpet because, oh no, what if you spill? Whereas this is something that you can feel confident in because it isn't too fancy. And again, that's my corner. Those are my clients that I work with, are the ones who are feeling anxiety about perfectionism. So I think the simpler a planner you can go with, and planner pads is very straightforward, I think that's going to mitigate a lot of that anxiety and make you more likely to invest your time and your effort into keeping your planner with all of your information and not be scared of it.
I agree with you completely. A lot of these fancy, pretty, quote unquote, elegant planners, the problem is now people look at them and say, but I don't want to write in them. What if I need to do a scratch? What if something changed? And that automatically kills the effect of really being a tool. If you are afraid that thing is going to look ugly, then you will not use it. You will not write down the stuff that you need to write. When you get frustrated, you will not write it, okay, because you don't want it to make it ugly. And if you are doing it that way, you have no tool. So I tend to tell people, buy the cheapest notebook until you feel comfortable scratching and ripping a page of your fancy one. Because on the cheap one, you will do it. No problem. Oh, I messed up. Okay, start again, and we feel fine. In the fancy one, people will look like, I don't know about this. Well, then you should not have a fancy one, because life planning goals, it's messy. As much as we love to have what we see in Pinterest and those pretty pages and full of color and people are spending those 3 hours making that perfect round, that's not the reality of planning and the day-to-day operations of at least 100% of the people work for me. Okay, so for the people who work with me, it's messy, it's scratching, it's grabbing a red pen because it was the only pen that was available right there when they needed to write it down. So if you want to have that pretty tool, and you are afraid to make it unpretty, not pretty at all, don't grab one of those. Go for the cheapest notepad that you can buy.
So quick answer to this question, Julie, Art is asking, so you can recommend starting with do you recommend starting with a pre-printed planner over a blank book?
depends on how much structure you need in your life. I need structure. I think I came from, before I worked in productivity and organizing, I worked in television, where blocks of an hour or half an hour or 15 minutes is very there. If you have a life that needs structure, then you need a pre-printed planner. If your life does not need a lot of time frame by time frame or day by day structure, then a blank notebook may be more to your liking. It depends on the individual, honestly.
Yeah, wonderful. And so, Penny, did you have a comment you wanted to share?
Sure, but if we have to move on, we can move on.
No worries. Go for it.
I think I like what Julie said in the context of that there's pretty and there's functional. I would dare say that we are all functional people who are on this, and that's why we're poo-pooing and telling those pretty people that they should go away and stop using their pretty things and drawing pretty pictures. So for some people, like, that's what motivates them to actually plan their day. So, we do have to understand that there's different personality types and different ways that people want to approach it. I'm also a very functional person, so that doesn't work for me because I would never write in it. And and actually, I think it's funny that they mix different types of journals. So I actually use the Legend one that they talked about because I like the way that it's structured, and that, like Julie said, you have to find the structure that works best for you. It helps me to align my goals, and I don't write down in my calendar, my printed calendar. I write certain things down in my printed calendar, and I have other things like my day-to-day schedule and the exact times that I have in my electronic calendar. So, I'm still sort of half and half. So it depends on where people are. So I like to keep my goals in the printed form, and I like to keep my, like if I have an event planned, that I want to see at a glance what I have going this month in terms of number of events. So I think it's what are you organizing, and that's going to make a lot of sense into the structure that you're going to choose. But why would Rolling Stone pick something that is a daily planner and compare it with a gratitude journal? Like, they're two totally different things, right? So I think it's whoever paid them advertising money, and that's how they got those four listed. But I do keep a gratitude journal as well, but that is a blank piece of paper, right? That's a blank thing that then I can do whatever I want with it, because that's more of a creative journal. Whereas your daily planner, and I also have my own, I have a 1-3-5 daily planner that I created, and that's how I manage the overall major tasks, my to-do list for the day.
Fantastic. So, Penny, if you could shoot me the link to that, I'm going to add a whole bunch of other planners that I have collected a list of over the course of time. And so from the Strike Through to Sketchnoting by Michael Rhoda, there's so many planners that are out there. And I've been tracking them for some time. Like Julie, I'm very interested in the planner world. And so the Commit 30, the FAVOs, there's so many different ones that are out there. I'll throw those into the show notes, into the video description for those folks who are interested, so you can kind of check those out. Moving
Ray, did you notice that they only showed the outside of the journals? So there was no meaningful information, with the idea of you can't judge a book by the cover, but they're expecting you to judge a planner, which has to be functional, by the cover, which again, it was Rolling Stone. It's not Productivity Monthly.
Right. It lacked also any discussion on methodology. It just showed the structure of the calendar or the time-based productivity methods, none of the actual other methods that are out there. There was a lot to be desired about that article, but I thought it was a really good jumping off point for the conversation, and I was right. Okay, moving right along, we just have a couple more stories before we hit our midpoint, our ad break. And what I wanted to do was cover a story that was put out by itbusinessedge.com, and they talked about low-code apps based on spreadsheets are kind of continuing to burgeon on. And this is, I think, absolutely true, which is that there are a lot of applications that are out there, including AppSheet. Recently, Google purchased a company called AppSheet that allows you to be able to build applications, mobile, basically a progressive app, on top of Google Sheets. And this is after the failure of the app, the app maker, the G Suite at that point, now Google Workspace, but the app maker was basically a tool that allowed allowed you to take all of the disparate parts of G Suite and turn it into an application, a bespoke application. So you went from, months and months of product development for a specific software product in-house down to just a couple of weeks. And that product, of course, ended up not being, wholly adopted. And so Google went ahead and shuttered it and then purchased AppSheet. And we know that Microsoft is working on this, and we have lots and lots of other applications that are coming out there, Airtable and many others that are out there. And so, it was just a point to let everybody know that the spreadsheet, the concept of the workbook, the spreadsheet workbook, is not going away anytime soon. We have Amazon with Honeycode, and we have just so many other platforms that are coming out that if you are trying to go low code or no code, really start thinking about how you capture data in spreadsheets, and then start to look for tools that can sit in front of that spreadsheet as an interface, hearkening back to the Microsoft Access days. We're in a whole new era where that's so much better, and just wanted to make a note for folks. Augusto, do you want to talk about the Loom updates? That is to say, there's an all-new Loom, everybody.
There is a new Loom, and they make five main changes, or they refresh the look. They go into team workspaces. So
for
now
folks, hold on. So for folks who do not know, Loom is a screen recording technology that allows you to be able to both record your screen, but also your video of yourself in kind of like a little tiny bubble so that you can kind of move it on screen and demonstrate on screen.
One of the cool things with Loom is exactly that allows for people who are not necessarily, can you do that with other apps? Yes, but Loom make it really easy where you can still be on the screen and bring your tools, your presentations, and do it. So now they bring 5 changes. So the fresh look, the team workspaces so people can work, the Business Pro. Now you can make screenshots that you could do before depending on the device, but it wasn't necessarily simple. And they still keep the education 100% free. That is an interesting thing, because they talk about this, but it's still the same thing they were doing, but they have not been able to jump into the education, even when I think it will be a great tool into education. What I'm seeing, at least on K to 8, so the kids, the middle schools and all that, is the teachers are so overwhelmed with this virtual, partial virtual, non-virtual, and all the other options that they get, that they really have no bandwidth to look at applications like this. And as this is going to take apparently a little bit long to send the kids full-time to school in many places, hopefully teachers get to a new normal where introducing tools like this get to be possible, and pretty cool.
All right, moving right along then is our last bit of news before the break. And I just wanted to point this out because I thought it was actually second to last piece. So in line with that, Loom obviously made this big update. And I just wanted to direct everybody to a Twitter thread where someone from, I believe, the Loom team, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, he does brand at Loom. So I'm guessing the brand director. He walks folks through how the brand strategist and the branding team at Loom walked through that. So for those of you who are in business, like myself, it's frequently a very kind of guarded process for seeing a company rebrand. And many times the outcomes are people are never happy with the brands that come out with so many of these companies. G Suite was just rebranded as Google Workspace and as the Google Small Business Advisor for Productivity. Obviously, that was a big deal because that's the product on which I spend most of my time training clients. And here we are with this huge overhaul of the brand. And some people love it, some people hate it for any number of reasons. Either way, this Twitter thread with accompanying Loom videos explain their process and how they came to the new brand. And I just thought it was really interesting for those of you who are in design and are interested about how this stuff works. This is a really good blueprint for how to go about that process in the future, and hopefully will be more productive for you in being able to communicate that in the future as well, because so much of a new brand is communicating why that brand came to be, how you designed the language, the design language, why you made certain choices, what were the trade-offs that you made along the process in coming to that point. And then in closing our first segment on the headlines is just that while this is a bit old, I just recently noticed this in the interface and then went in search of how this was possible that I missed this for so long, which is that I've been using Toggle, which is now Toggle Track because there are multiple applications in the suite. But Toggle Track is a time tracking tool, and they have a calendar feature. So you can actually go into the system and actually see your tracked time in a calendar view. And it's just brilliant. I love it, and I'm really, really happy that Toggle has brought this to existence. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to tell you all about this. Toggle now has a calendar feature, and
it was fantastic. Actually, I use a different application for this, and I am in the process of starting in November 1st to move back to Toggle Track because of the calendar view, because I cannot see. The calendar view allows me to see the hours for the clients and the stuff in a much natural way than start at 3 p.m. and finish at 4:15. I can visualize that as well. So starting November, I'm moving all my clients to Toggle Track because of that calendar feature. So if you are tracking the numbers and you struggle like me, that you see the list but really need to go back to the calendar to copy and paste, go to Toggle Track because you can save that step and really save a long, long time with this.
All right, and so with that brings us to the end of our first segment of the headlines of this week, and so on to our sponsor this week.
Did you know half of small businesses don't have websites, and half don't make it past 1 year in business? Are these stats correlated? We're not sure, but we think you should have a website. W3C Web Services provides affordable managed WordPress website hosting, along with VPS, domain name registration, and other small business-focused services. For listeners of this podcast, you can book a free 30-minute digital marketing strategy session when you purchase a new hosting plan, $150 value. Once you purchase your new hosting plan, forward the receipt to support@w3cinc.com with the podcast title in the subject line of the email message, and we'll get you scheduled for your digital marketing strategy session. Head over to anythingbutidle.com/webhosting and get started with your small business website today. And now, back to your show.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we were talking about Toggle Track and its new calendar feature, and we're going to continue with our headlines this week with some more headlines. Go figure. So to do that, let's kick into our next piece of news, which is that Evernote has released their new desktop applications, and with that has brought about a whole bunch of both confusion, but also new features, and you know, I think we all know this already, but I'm both the Evernote regional leader for North America and also an Evernote certified consultant. And Julie Bestry is also a fellow Evernote certified consultant. And so I just wanted to make folks know about just a couple of things. Right now on the Evernote for iOS app, Evernote currently doesn't have URL scheme support. So what that means is that Evernote // URL scheme is currently incompatible with the iOS SDK, and so that the integration SDK. So right now those are not working on iOS, and I'm really, really hoping that Evernote brings that back. And I can imagine that the Evernote team is working on that. I just wanted to make everyone aware of that so that you're not beating your head against the desk trying to figure out why potentially shortcuts have failed to work or those kinds of things. But that is a limitation of the software right now, and hopefully will be overcome over time. The other side is a bit of big news. This does not affect at all anyone who is paying for Evernote. If you are a paying subscriber, you can just ignore this. For Evernote basic users, that is free users of Evernote, the device limit now covers your 2 devices. Okay, for Evernote Web, any of the desktop applications, or any of the mobile applications, which means that you can have it installed on 2 of those devices. But if you're using Evernote Web, it does command one of those device licenses. Okay, so if you if you have it on your laptop on your phone, you cannot use Evernote Web without it asking you to log out of one of those devices. You'll have to upgrade in order to be able to use more than those 2 devices. Okay, so just be aware that is now a limit, and that's not going to change. So I guess it's a cut once and cut deep situation, and so there's just a lot out there. You'll see lots of comments on both sides of that. I'm not going to get into it here, but just know that that is a reality now. The device limit now covers Evernote Web. Evernote's statement is that it is because Evernote Web now has many of the features that desktop and mobile has. There are folks who are on the other side of that argument, and I do not plan to really worry too much about it because I'm not an avid user of Evernote Web at the moment, and I'm looking forward to seeing the new features come into Evernote both on desktop and mobile, and we'll kind of leave it at that. I want to just speed through a couple of these articles. Oh, no. I'm sorry. So we have an article out of A Life of Productivity by Chris Bailey, who's the author of A Life of Productivity Project, as well as Hyperfocus. And he wrote this article called To Become More Productive, Stop Hustling. And in essence, the kind of quick summary he writes for the article is, the most productive people don't hustle themselves into an early grave. They work with calm deliberateness, prioritizing thoughtfulness over speed. This will help you work with greater intention, end quote. And I was curious about everyone's thoughts on this article, and I'm because of one particular quotation from the article. I'm going to read it just because it really stuck out for me, which is that what he noted here was, let's see, where is it? Here it is. He goes, those who work calmly and deliberately are often also quite lazy, and it's for this reason they look for shortcuts, and end quote. Now, that kind of just dug at me, and I couldn't quite get over that part of the article, but as a whole, from kind of the gestalt of the article, do you agree that there are these two camps of people who are the quote-unquote hustlers, who are very task-oriented, and those people who are more calm and deliberate workers who like to really focus and dwell on a particular project? And what are the values of each of those people, and potentially what are maybe some of the other paradigms that are out there?
Ray, there's a logo. It shows up on mugs and all sorts of things. It's pretty popular among professional organizers. It says, organizing is for people who are too lazy to look for their things. And I'm fine with that. I want shortcuts. I want to be able to have life be as easy as possible. Organizing is about the end result. Productivity is about the end result. If there were ways to cut through all of our productivity log jams by snapping our fingers, I don't think a lot of people, other than maybe those of us who are productivity professionals and make money teaching how to make it easier, I don't think a lot of people would mind if we could wave the magic wand. So I don't think that's necessarily always the case, but I think it's okay if people are being more thoughtful because they don't want to have to make it complicated and do all the heavy lifting. I think thoughtfulness, I think if you use your brain instead or you use, let's say, your soul and your mind in order to plan out what you have to do so you don't have to take as many steps, I think that's fine. I think that's actually good.
I think it's funny, it hit me with the lazy too, because sometimes I tell people that the reason that I come up with faster and different ways to do things is because I'm lazy. So in case you got insulted there, Ray, that we shouldn't be calling people.
It wasn't insult. It wasn't an insult to me. I mean, I don't particularly take
I know,
people's...
but like abroad, I think it's if it's a motivator and it works, right, that it gets you to be more structured or to organize yourself differently. I mean, I'm not really lazy, but I'd rather do things in a smarter way if I can. I don't know that I agree with, hustlers versus calm and deliberate. I guess that's just the way that he chose to categorize them. I probably wouldn't categorize people in that way, but I think there's people who are bottom up people and there's people who are top down. Now I know plenty of top down people who are hustlers too, and who aren't necessarily calm. They're all over the place. So, but I would categorize it more like that there's people who are bottom up and they're taskmasters, and they like to get stuff done, and there's people who are top down who want to bring a little bit more strategic thought to it and may come up with those shortcuts as a result of focusing on the end result and finding a newer, easier, better way to do it.
And I agree with.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Gustav.
And I agree. I didn't like the hustle versus calm as one is right and one is wrong, because like what you're describing, I know calm people who are incredibly productive. They're just calm people. That's their nature. And I know hustlers who are completely unproductive. They're just hustling all over the god, but moving in circles. So I didn't like it, but instead I really like that bottom up or top down, because that really associate more of what these people are. And that was my problem with that article. It's nothing wrong with decide, you know what, I want to be lazy. There is nothing wrong with said, I'm going to get really good at productivity so I can read more, so I can rest more, so I can go to the ocean, every weekend and sit in the ocean and drink tea and don't think about work. There is nothing wrong about using productivity that way, as other people use the same techniques to be able to have 3 businesses. I don't think there is nothing wrong into being what he categorized as a hustler or as a calm people. It is really what you are using this and what is your end goal with this. What is what you really want to do? And that was what I did not enjoy particularly about the article.
Yeah, and there are still folks out there. I mean, if you look at David Allen, he always says, I'm the laziest man on the planet kind of thing. He always talks about how he likes to utilize the least energy to get the most effect out of it. And I guess that's what efficiency is. I think that the term lazy has a very negative connotation. And so saying something like that, I think is a little bit charged. Julie?
There was one other thing, something related that really struck a wrong tone for me. When he talked about hustling means that you're not being strategic enough, I thought there was an incredible sense of privilege implicit in that. And I see this with almost every article, every mainstream article written about productivity, that there seems to be this idea that everybody is a college-educated, white, upper middle class knowledge worker type of person. And I imagine if we're talking about a working mom with 2 jobs, trying to deal with a pandemic and getting her kids, getting everything taken care of from her family, and now dealing with all of this education from home thing, that's a very different kind of lifestyle from what a childless millennial who has like an Etsy shop on the side, along with the fact that her programming job is letting her work from home. So I think we always have to look at what kind of implicit bias is going on in anything we're reading about productivity. And I just think there's huge privilege assumed in the statement that hustling means you're not being strategic enough. And yes, it may depend on how he's defining hustling, but the way it appears to be defined here, I thought that was a little bit of a slap in the face to people who aren't in that generally assumed readership category, who are reading and just aren't being represented.
Yeah, there's a lot of underrepresentation in a lot of the productivity space, and it's something that we all have to, challenge. I mean, it's actually the reason why I've been going out and trying to find more people like you, which are female productivity experts. You don't know how difficult it is to find someone, for particular shows when you're just trying to find people just that are women in productivity. It's a real challenge, and then you add in any other minority, and it becomes that much more difficult. And so the articles do tend to sway toward that population. And I
And the
think
books too. If you flip open any productivity books to the author photo, no offense, but the guys all look like you, Ray. All the authors look like you. Maybe no
Like Spock?
pointy ears.
Okay, so moving right along, just a couple of notes here. Barnes & Noble Nook services were out for a while. This was basically several weeks. They were under cyber attack, and so their entire online infrastructure was down. As I understand it, most of those services have been restored, but their website on the Barnes & Noble Help Center currently, it says, while most Nook services are accessible, they are still addressing issues with libraries refreshing, delivering new releases and pre-orders, as well as delivering recent newsstand issues to your library. I'm not quite sure how restored they are, if that's the case, but they are noting that they have restored most of these things. But if you are for some reason experiencing issues with your Nook services, that is why. And so look for advice from Barnes & Noble Nook, Barnes & Noble generally, but Nook specifically, on what you should do in terms of, whether you need to change passwords, if you need to, lock down your account, and of course change any other passwords where you were sharing your password with that particular account with any other accounts across your productivity system. Timular is an application that is, Timular is a physical product first and foremost, and it is a time tracking tool. Well, Timular also has a software product called Timular as well, and so the physical product is called the Tracker, and then the application Timular. They have now released a new feature called Quick Track, and this is a part of the software application, the desktop application. And in essence, what it does is it gives you the ability to very seamlessly use a keyboard command. Unfortunately, it is the same keyboard command as Command E, the search software that I use, and so it's a little bit cumbersome. But either way, Command E on Mac OS, and then Control E on the Windows system. And so what it does is allows you to basically open up a line that tells Timular what you're doing, and then you can just quickly hit enter, and then it starts tracking your time. So just a really nice, feature to just keep focus on what you're doing, but still being able to capture and track that time. So very happy to see that come to pass. Augusto, do you want to handle the next few items? They're just little ministerial items we can get through.
Well, one password that we have mentioned, we talk about as a piece of software last week. We talk about when we talk about cybersecurity, because it's one of my favorite password applications. It's now available in Linux beta, and you can find it in your most distros. You can find them. I recommend, as we discussed lengthily on the cybersecurity episode last week, the importance of these passwords, and seeing one password and others coming to this, I think, is really, really important. The next one, also curiously, we mentioned this last week when we were discussing, or the week before when we were discussing about the podcast and what's happening with Apple and Spotify and Alexa. It is really interesting. You can now listen to the Spotify.
It is not the day of the week of October 26th.
And I apologize to all our listeners who now are having a conversation with the big lady. But now the big G assistant is also going to be able to listen to your Spotify podcast if you use one of those. The next one, it's really interesting. Acer unveils a new line of Chromebooks, and we discussed last week how Chromebook is getting really strong. Now they're going to be supporting some of these devices for 9 years. that is interesting because when you ask people, most people don't keep computers that long. So having really now supporting your computer for 9 years make Chrome really something attractive. With other things that are coming and we have been discussing, really make Chrome a platform to really pay attention in a way that most people have not been paying attention. We all use now Google Meet, we use Google as the calendar, we use Google Docs, and Google Sheets is getting better and better and better. Seeing how this happening gets really, really interesting and powerful. So it is interesting what's going to happen now with Google, with the Chromebook, and what is coming on the near future. So our next article is the 2 rules from Elon Musk for learning faster. The rule number 1 is make sure you build a tree of knowledge. And he talks about the peripherals, not about the central. That's the reason he called it tree. And the second rule is you can't remember what you can't connect. And Penny was mentioned early, her mind maps. And I love to teach people the mind maps exactly for this reason, because the more you bring onto that teaching that harvest, bring the mind map, let people see how everything connect with each other, the better these conversations go, the better these things go. So it was really an interesting article to read those 2 things and to really think how both affect, conscious or unconscious, really are long-term, really, but more important, how those 2 ideas help us really expand, the different things of knowledge that we have to the different things we want to accomplish.
Yeah, so did you think he got it right? Is the method right?
Well, Elon Musk will change those 2 rules when he discovers the next rule, but I think I agree completely on you cannot remember what you cannot connect. And I think, and I don't necessarily disagree with the tree of knowledge. You have a core, and it's really about what the peripherals and how that peripheral connect to that core. Again, he will change it at any moment, and we will write the next new rules, the improved 2.0 rules of Elon Musk. But they are not completely crazy.
Yeah, so we've discussed the book Make It Stick on Productivity Book Group, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes for folks who want to listen back to that. But Make It Stick is all about the science of really, successful learning is the subtitle, the science of successful learning. And the book really talks about really what current or contemporary research really shows in terms of how we learn. And this is really important stuff because I always find it to be implausible that people will get good at productivity if they can't actually learn the systems that are being taught to them. And most of the things that people struggle with when it comes to productivity is that if they have claimed to me that they have read a book or they have studied some methodology, then they don't practice that methodology. It's one of 2 particular things. One is that they didn't actually grok the methodology, and 2, it's that they're not using the method for whatever reason. And I'm usually shocked by the fact that most of the time it's because they maybe absorbed 10% of what they read or 10% of what they were trying to learn from the methodology. And if they just got it to maybe 80%, they would be that much better off. And so learning is a skill set. It's a combination of skills and strategies. And if we don't learn those things, then you're really just, floating along. And so I really, really recommend, like, the first thing you need to do is to learn how to learn. And I know that there are several, courses on Coursera about this. There's a very popular one. What is it called? How to Learn? What's the name that is being taught? out there, one of you can Google it. There are these really important functions of being able to learn, and I felt like the article really tried to oversimplify what is a very complex topic and something that should be taught in schools. But really, you're not taught to learn in school. You are just you're given information, and I think that's really it's a fine line between the two of those things, and I think more students need to be taught those skills of how to learn so that they're better able to more effectively and efficiently show up in a learning environment and get those things digested. And then of course, once you leave school, we still need those skills. We're learning, hopefully. We're all lifelong learners, and we need to have those skills so we can productively mesh that into the rest of our life. And we can do that if we know how and to use those right skills.
I think for parents who have been having their kids somehow virtual, this has been an incredible experience, because in the same way my parents send me to school and good luck to you and hope that you can learn, and then eventually I get to college and they hope that I could learn. Okay, what we have been finding with these changes is the kids need to learn in many cases in a different way than their parents, and parents are seeing, oh, this kid do not learn in the way I will have learned. And as they try to help these kids, they need to confront two realities. Reality number one is this kid may not learn in the same way you learn. And it's not that he can't learn, it's he will not or she will not learn in the same way you do. And you need to get creative. But also, we are now noticing how much teachers on the day-to-day operation can flip between the 10, 20 kids and teach each kid in a different way. That now with the distance is not happening. And we're seeing a lot of kids struggling, not because lack of ability, but because the only way they're getting is not working for them. And what I hope is this bring some awareness to the parents of how really these kids need to learn, how to make this learning effective, and somehow that will allow to give better tools to these kids to learn towards the future.
Can I jump in for a second?
Go for it, Penny.
I like what you're saying, that the parents, have to be aware, and they're playing a big role in the learning environment for their children. And I hope this is a huge wake-up call for the education system that is so outdated, because even though that teacher may be effective in teaching to different kids in the classroom, there's still a lot that is not happening in the classroom because of the way that those kids need to learn. So I'm hoping that they will, be able to really learn from this, to see that it's gotten even worse online, and how can they revamp and revisit the education system, so that we're not saying that, hey, it's up to you, the learner, but it is, right? But it would be good if it was equal parts. The learner needs to know how they learn and how they can relate it to their context, and learn to learn and learn to unlearn what you already know, so that you can open up space to be curious and learn something new if you are already a learned individual. But also that the people who are putting courses out there that are training in various different formats, that they are using other and more stickable methods, so that we don't get caught up in that forgetting curve, right? That says that after a certain period of time, within a week or something, that we've pretty much forgotten 60% of what we're learning. So there has to be that responsibility of people doing the courses that are making them more stickable, that are making them not just one time, and are having follow-up types of activities, and better enabling people, whether it's students or adults, to be able to relate it to their own lives and their own context. That's what really helps people to make it stickable, is to see, how does that relate to me?
To bring this around, basically to loop in what all three of you have said, Ray, when you talk about people who read a productivity book and they're only using 10% of what the book has to offer. Well, we're looking at if we want to look at Elon Musk and what he said, we've got the centrality and and what is on the periphery. And if something you are presenting, so, if whether it's an educator, a speaker, an influencer, is not communicating to the learner in the way that the learner has to learn, then we are lucky if something on the periphery resonates with that listener. And that's why if somebody's only using 10% of a system, there's a likelihood that that system was not explained in a way for that learner to figure out what is at the centrality, what is at the core. And something in what was on the periphery excited them. And it's as much, if not more so, a problem with the presenter. So when you're looking at educators, I think if anything came out of this pandemic that's good, is that people have so much more of an appreciation for what educators, particularly elementary and middle school educators, do on a day-to-day basis, and not just the fact that they can teach math to kids that we can't. So it all sort of loops around that if we cannot explain something so that people who are not just visual and auditory and kinesthetic, but people who have any of a variety of learning abilities as well as learning disabilities, learning styles, if we can't communicate the central idea, what the core is, so that everybody can understand it, then we're never going to have everybody rushing to understand a concept. And we're just going to be lucky if people can get those little tendrils of the periphery to hold on to.
Yeah, the end result, I know Arten's noting here that administrations need to learn even more than the teachers do. I would say that, learning systems are more complex than we think they are, and we should be looking at it from every angle as being a partnership. Each of those players, whether that be the system in which the child or adult is learning in, whether it's a pedagogical or andragogical environment, down to leadership, the teachers, the parents, and the students themselves, all of us need to be involved. And the developers, those of you who are developing software, you're not off the hook there as well. It's really important for us all to be at the table and making sure that we're making the best decisions with each other to make learning both a fruitful process, but also one that's engaging. And so wonderful. Moving right along, I wanted to just make a note that back on the Linux kind of topic, Microsoft recently released Edge as a part of is now a skin of the Chromium project. They're now Chrome based or Chromium based, just like Google Chrome is Chromium based. And so now there's this very large contingent of browsers that dominate the market that are all based on the Chromium browser. Microsoft Edge is one of them, and that has allowed them to release the Linux version of Microsoft Edge now. So those who are interested can go out and try the first build of Edge using a Linux platform. Next up, Windows 10 Insider folks. Those of you who are the bleeding edge folks on Windows 10 and have braved Windows 10 Insider should see a few different new additions to the market. I'm not going to get into the particulars here, but just note that there are some more dark mode features where Windows 10 is now being a little bit more aware, like in splash screens, as well as in some of the different spaces in which you're navigating. Like when you're changing screens and those kinds of things, you're going to see a little bit more of dark theme fitting and matching to the style of that, including the taskbar and so on and so forth. So they've also got what they call an improved defragmentation tool. So now you can have some advanced features for defragging hidden drives and other kinds of features there as well. So if you are an avid Windows 10 user and you're on the Insider program, you can go ahead and check that out. To close out our headlines this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about the antitrust suit that has just recently been filed by the Department of Justice in the U.S. against Google. And the article I placed in there is a little bit biased since they're from a liberal kind of media outlet. But I thought it was useful in positioning really where Google is in the context of these things and getting sort of the panelists' opinions on this, which is that so that you're all aware what the DOJ filed against Google is that they have, in some way, shape, or form, some antitrust violation for their dominance in search. And the idea is that the federal government will want to break apart Google, and the part they want to break apart, of course, is their search engine from the rest of what is Google. That is, the Alphabet company owns Google, and so, what are your thoughts there? Do you think that the government, one, will be successful against Google, and more importantly, what does it mean to our productivity, which is the most important part of this show? What does it mean to your productivity if Google's search engine were somehow bifurcated from the rest of the services we've come to know and love as a part of Google?
I think I'm a little bit older than everybody else on the call, so I remember them breaking up AT&T into the baby bells, and I think that that's dramatically different from what we would see if Google were broken up into its spare parts, or even just separating the browser from its tools. I'll be honest, I love Google as a browser. I don't love, or at least I really don't use, the Google tools much. I like other tools. So for me personally, it wouldn't have a profound effect, but from a more holistic perspective, we're not talking about something that only Americans use. We're talking about something that has an international, global impact. And I think it's going to be a lot more complex than I think anything the government tries to do with technology is going to be dramatically different from anything we saw in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And I don't think it will be as easy for any particular government to accomplish as they might hope. And I think there are going to be so many unintended consequences that the risks are boundless.
I don't even know what to say on that. I mean, who knows, right? There are so many unknowns, right, as to what that really means to separate them. You have plenty of tools that are not under the same roof that work very well and integrated together. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all integration will be lost, and that it won't be as easy and effective to log into one thing and be already logged into another thing. So, it really depends on what they're looking to do with it. And, and interesting enough, maybe Google will have enough arguments that there's a lot of new search engines that are coming up that are really building reputation. So where could those be in a couple of years? People are saying that Chrome is very heavy, and it takes up a lot of energy on my computer with things that are open. I know people who are moving away for privacy issues, that they don't want that anymore. So I don't know that something wouldn't also just happen on its own, that there's other products that will come and take over certain market space. I mean, Google could argue that Microsoft has the same issue and should be broken out in many different pieces. So it'll be interesting to see, because if there's a precedent set there, where else will they go to break up some of these really big companies?
Well, I think there is a double argument in here. One is exactly what you were saying, but the problem now is one of the things we see, is the integration of those. If you grab, an iPhone, you can really, now that coming to iOS 14, really run everything on Google. Okay, you can change your default browser to Chrome, your default email to Gmail, your default everything to Google, and run on a completely different platform. And the same thing you can do when you go to Android, when you go to really any machine. You can get other browsers to integrate with Google Search, as well as even Chrome to get, So are they going to win? The problem is, in order to win that battle, you need to understand so much about technology that I sadly don't see it. What I have seen on every time they go and try to get the pros to Facebook and to Microsoft and to this is their understanding of technology is so poor that almost Google can answer, yeah, 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 let it go and find the way out of that. And so could they make it three different corporations? Maybe. Okay. Are that going to change anything from the productivity part? No, no. Google now the search engine part is going to pay more licenses to the Alphabet component, who is going to own that. But can you break it? No, because the only way to break it is to tell me as a consumer that if I buy a Google machine, I cannot use Google Chrome. And that is not going to happen. And the reality is all these tech companies learned so much from Microsoft in the 90s that they are better prepared than all this antitrust with their arguments. Okay, for every argument they have 10 counter arguments. So even if they win because of power, not because of reason, okay, because they can, not because it's true, the technology giants will find their way to make it happen. And in the worst case scenario, you will now get Google search engine that is now in a server somewhere in the world, use it as a special license since we live in the US.
Yeah, so I'll close out the topic on this, which is that this is going to take, as Art noted, Microsoft already went through this fight in the 90s, and you can see that they both won the case and were stronger from it. I'll say a couple things. One is that I don't know why we have gotten into this notion that the federal government can't break up large companies. As Julie noted, we have been it's been fairly across the aisle. People have always been fairly comfortable with the federal government looking at monopolies and determining whether or not they need to. Monopolies are not illegal in this country. It's about antitrust or anti-competitive practices that we're really concerned about. Google has a pretty strong leg up here. In their argument against them, this will take years to litigate in reality, and so once that all comes out, I think the end result is that we will have already been primed to deal with whatever the outcome is, and so our productivity systems will all kind of morph around whatever the change is going to be because we'll be aware of it. And so I bring this up because as one of the articles, because no one should be fearful of continuing to use their Google products. It's going to be the same for a very long time, and then once any change does come down the pike, we will be prepared for it. Art's noting here the core issue is you're not seeing what I think you should see in your search results, and I think there is a good argument to that, which is that clearly the federal government, both Congress and their most recent report, as well as this DOJ complaint, does talk about the fact that Google is the major browser that they are paying to be the major browser in a lot of different platforms and in a lot of different places that consumers don't know. And as Julie intimated, this is an international problem. Both with the GDPR and in the EU, Australia's new data protection laws, and hopefully some future federal legislation here in the United States. Hint, hint, Congress. We need federal legislation that unifies how we deal with both from a small business perspective. We need to have a unified law to comply with, but also the reality is that we as citizens deserve and should be demanding the right data protection and privacy laws from both private entities, but as well as from the federal government and its protections. So I just think it's really, really interesting, and we'll see how it goes from there. I'll close with Art's note here, which is that Google will kill its products before the government will. Because Google is known for deprecating products that they feel like are not working. So with that, those are our stories this week, aside from our feature story of the week to come. That means it's time for the Science of Productivity with Matt Plummer from Sarvana. So with it, take it away, Matt.
Welcome to the Science of Productivity segment. In this segment, I bring you new research roughly each week that explores the ideas of productivity and how to accomplish your goals faster. In this segment, what I want to do is share some emerging research at a Stanford University that talks about how we should organize our tasks over the course of the day. So what we know is the average professional switch tasks about every 10.5 minutes. Now that doesn't, or switch context about every 10.5 minutes. Now that doesn't mean that they're always switching tasks in the traditional sense of what we mean by task. It might mean that they're running an email and they switch to their browser to reference a paper or a link and then come back to the email. But nevertheless, what that shows is that people are switching tasks very frequently. And in general, what we should do is try to minimize the amount of switching, which most of us know at this point because of switching costs. But, some measure of switching between tasks is inevitable. And so how can we think about organizing, sequencing tasks in our day in such a way that minimizes that effect and optimizes our productivity? Well, research from an associate professor of organizational behavior at Stanford shows us some insights that we can use here. And what she did was she looked and spent some time on tea plantations in India, which I know is very different from most of those who are listening, your jobs. But I think there's some insights we can transport there. And so what she said is she looked at the core task of picking tea leaves and then said, what happens when you introduce other tasks for these workers to do alongside that core task? How does that affect their productivity? And what she found was that the nature of the task that is added to the core task actually has a huge effect on productivity. So if it's a facilitative task, which adds to and contributes to the core task, then it has a huge positive effect on productivity. But if it's a non-facilitative task, so it doesn't do anything to support the core task, then it actually has either a negative effect or a neutral effect on productivity. The effect is actually so significant that it boosted productivity on the core task by 10% for up to a month after introducing a facilitative supplementary task. Now, why does it do that? Why does adding a facilitative task, boost productivity? Well, Professor Ranganathan's theory is that it has to do with something called core task identification, which is basically your identification with the task, your engagement with the task and belief in it and commitment to it. And so what happens is when you engage in a facilitative task, you actually get the broader picture of why that core task is important, because you see these other complementary tasks that are building out the whole picture of why that matters. And so it creates and strengthens your core task identification. So what does this mean for you? Recognizing that your job is likely very different. You probably do a huge variety of tasks. Well, what I say is reflect on your core tasks. What are the core tasks that you're being paid to do, that you've decided to do? And then rather than jumping from core tasks to supplementary tasks that has nothing to do with that core task, try to group your tasks together so that when you do a core task, the other tasks that you're doing around that are facilitative tasks. And take pockets of the day and group those as much as you can together. And you might experience a boost in your productivity. If it's anywhere close to 10%, that would be really significant. So that is it for today's segment of the Science of Productivity. Thanks so much for listening.
And so thank you, Matt. That was Matt Plummer from Zervana with our Science of Productivity segment. And so that takes us on to new tools of the week. Augusto and I come across many personal productivity tools and services each week as we're researching all the various productivity and technology news that we bring to you. And so new tools of the week, we're able to bring you each a tool that we think you might like. And we always invite our panelists to bring tools that they think you might like as well. And it doesn't have to be a new tool. It can be any tool that you think would be helpful to people. So don't worry about that. And so with that, I'm going to bring up my first tool of the week, and then we'll go from there. So my tool this week, my new tool this week, is a tool called Hold. This is Hold X. I'm guessing that means it's the 10th edition. But either way, I've had the opportunity to have a conversation with the folks over at Hold. And in essence, what this is an iOS app that's currently in beta, as well as a Chrome extension that kind of acts as a focus coach. It helps you identify what you want to work on, and then it goes ahead and kind of freezes you into that position so that you are required to work in that space and kind of blocks other things so you can stay focused on the task. I know they're building new features into the application all the time, and so I'm just really excited to see what they're doing. They're currently in early access, beta. We actually have a public channel inside of Personal Productivity Club where they're working with beta users. So if you're interested, go ahead over to www.personalproductivity.club, join, and then you can join the public channel there where they have a group of the beta users. But I found it to be just a very interesting application. There are some competitors in the market there, and I'm really excited to see how the folks there over at Hold move forward. And so with that, Augusto, what is your new tool this week?
My tool is called Charti for iOS, and what I will allow you to do is to create charts directly from shortcuts. So you can go, for example, for sales, and then it will be able to grab your CSV file and turn it into a graph directly into your iOS. So I have clients who work with a lot of data that a lot of times all that they need to see is what is happening. Now they can, instead of go into the Excel sheet, open that, allow Charti to pull the information, create that as a shortcut, as a widget, and have all kind of graphics from expenses, from sales, from activities. Hey, you want to log how much you have writing, so you can get Ulysses, for example, to pull how much you have write today and post it and turn it into a chart. So if you like data or you analyze data or you like to see graphs, it is an awesome application to play directly from shortcuts.
All right, great. Julie?
Okay, I love free things. I love open source. And because I'm not particularly techie, sometimes I'm not sure what I'm getting into, which is why I like Product Hunt. And Product Hunt had a little blurb for Focus Task put together by Radoslav Stankov. It's an open source Mac menu bar app designed in particular to help you do deep work. So you get the drop down from the menu, you create the information you need for the task that you're going to work on. And there are 3 sections: to-dos, bookmarks, and notes. And you can drag and drop bookmarks, which makes it nice. And you can use this as a way to do deep work, the way it says, where you can create one little drop down of these for each disparate project or major task group that you need to work on today. So you're not facing all of the bookmarks and all of the separate notes and to-dos for other irrelevant things. And that's great. But I found just in a short period of time using it that it's great for this is my focus for today. So you may have multiple tasks you're working on, but you can still use those to-dos, bookmarks, and notes, and you have it all in one place. There is an incredibly low learning curve on it. It's not steep at all. I think you can figure out how to use it in about 12 seconds. It's got a tiny footprint. There are no apps to open. There are no sticky notes all over your desk. So it's portable. So it is purely digital, which means you can take it. If we weren't in a pandemic, you could take it to the coffee shop. But also, it's just nice to not have to search around your computer for all the information you want for whatever thing you need to be focusing on for the next 9 Pomodoros or whatever. It's right there, and it's a click to drop down. And you can do everything from the keyboard. If you're somebody who doesn't want to click on the screen, you don't have to mouse to use it at all. So it's incredibly robust for a tiny little menu bar app.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
It's free.
Yeah. It is free. It is free. Art is asking whether there's a browser or Windows equivalent version, and it looks like it is written in Electron, so which is the same platform that many other Trello's desktop application, Evernote's new desktop application, all of those are all written on top of the Electron JS framework. So Art, you can go ahead and check out their listing on Electron JS, maybe js.org, and seeing if they are available with other tools. And so with that, Penny, do you have a tool for us this week?
Sure, I can share. It's very similar to Julie's tool. I've really enjoyed using it lately. It's called Plattstack. It was an interview that I did a couple of months ago, and I think it's still in beta, but so it allows you to open up entire desktops for your Chrome. So I can go in and I can say I'm working on a project and here's all the links that I need, and I can open them all at once, and then I can shut everything else. So I like it too from that perspective, that I can manage that and have them all there. I also like it so that I can keep all of certain types of links and apps, and I can create a separate segment that has just those things on there that let's say I want to come back to. So articles that I might stumble upon while I'm doing something else, other focus work, and I'll go, oh, this is interesting, and I can just drag it over to Plattstack in the list of check this out, and then it's there for me. So I think it's a really simple, easy to use, great tool. And then you can also share stacks. So that means that I can have a stack for certain links that I love. So maybe like I'm into tennis. So I have all these different articles that I've loved about tennis. I can share that with other people that love tennis, or, my favorite apps, I can share them there, and so forth. So it's pretty cool.
There's a question from Art about whether or not the stacks are shareable.
So you can make them shareable, and it's still in beta. So that's a piece that they're still working on, but it's going to be like your channel. And then you can share, you can make certain stacks public so that you can share them in your channel.
Wonderful. And so with that, those are our new tools of the week. And so saving the best for last, I wanted to get into our featured story this week. Augusto, what is our featured story this week?
Windows 10 is arriving to Chromebook. And as we discussed last week, Chrome now is going to support some device up to 9 years. That I think is completely crazy.
Crazy good.
Even me I don't know, it is what it is. But as a person who this is the first serious threat that I see from Chrome to my iPad lifestyle. Okay, the idea of having a high-end desktop and last 9 years. But then Parallels came now with an approved Chrome software that will allows you to run the Windows applications inside of that Chromebook. Yeah, you're required to have a certain kind of machine. Right now, it's a 16 gigabytes of RAM. But for corporate, the idea to be able to get these machines to have 9 years of support, being able to run the Windows system or the Windows software if they need to inside of a Chrome machine, I think it's outstanding. I think from education, from corporate, we are going to start seeing more and more Chromebooks, and we are going to start seeing Microsoft, being in certain places the second kind of machine, the second operating system. So I think this is a really game changer. I still will live in my iPad. I will still live in my MacBooks, but I think this really is a way from Chromebook or Chrome to really move and shake the market, especially the corporate market.
I'm going to give the devil's advocate just for the fun of it here, which is to say that I don't think this actually changes much about the market. I think that this is an enterprise move, and Windows is right to want it because they are losing market share over time. Their operating system is no longer their moneymaker. Their moneymaker is in cloud. Their money is in potentially cloud services that are built on top of Azure and that whole system. And I think that the reality is that Chrome OS is going to proliferate because it is cheap, it is free, and it works on almost anything. I mean, I can put Chrome OS on, really anything. I put it on my refrigerator right now, like, it just works so flexibly on anything. And with Android and the proliferation of Fuchsia wanting to become kind of an omni OS, I think that eventually Chrome and Android are going to merge or morph at some point through the development of Fuchsia and whatever Google is kind of doing in that space. And so increasing the Chrome OS footprint is kind of secondary to the fact that Google has won the browser wars. Chromium is the most important part, being on people's computers, not Chrome OS. And so dominating in the browser space, I think, is far more important here. So that's going to be my devil's advocate position here. Any other thoughts regarding Windows 10 coming to Chromebooks as kind of the flipping the script on Chromebooks and bringing, first with Project Christini and bringing Linux to the Chromebook, but now Microsoft basically coming to the Chromebook in Windows 10 version. No thoughts? No thoughts?
I think for productivity, it is also going to be interesting because we are, for good or for bad, having a massive generation of kids who have grown on Chromebook. Okay, our kids don't grow in Windows. It's the exception are the schools that are living in Windows. Most of the schools live on Chrome OS. Their kids have Chromebooks. That's the machine they know. That and the iPads, even more than the PC. So I think it's an amazing movement from Microsoft not to lose the relevance of the other applications and allowed somehow to merge between the old people who knew the Windows machine to all this bunch of new kids. That's really what they have been living is on Chrome OS.
Fantastic. All right. So that is our featured story this week, and I'm still excited to play with it. I'm looking forward to playing with Windows 10 on Chromebooks. I'm pretty sure that you're going to have to have a pretty powerful Chromebook in order to do that, and I'm looking forward to playing with it. But hopefully we have some folks out there who are Chromebook users, and you will tell me about your experience because I'm really interested in it. With that, we've got a couple of announcements before we close out. I wanted to just let everybody know about a little bit of errata. Last week, I was talking about the deprecation of classic Hangouts. This was specifically related to Google Voice, and I just wanted to make sure that I was clear about this. So I'm gonna read this little note from folks. That is to say, you can get calls to your Google Voice number using Classic Hangouts online on Gmail and through the Classic Hangouts Chrome extension. And what is going to happen is that Hangouts for the function that Google Voice handles is the part that's going away from Google Hangouts. And so Google Voice is basically going to take over for that inside of the Gmail environment in the Chrome extension and so on and so forth. So just be mindful of that I'm really specifically talking about Google Voice as that part. Now Hangouts is on the chopping block no matter what. So it's really good to start the process of kind of preparing yourself for that exit from the Hangouts experience over time because it's just plainly going away. One other minor note here, which is just an announcement. Our Evernote certified consultant colleague, as well as another one of our Evernote regional leaders, is having a free live training through General Assembly. And I should probably bring this up on screen so you can all see this. So in essence, General Assembly is hosting this training on November 19th, and Stacy Harmon will be going ahead and doing that. This is a part of their 2030 movement, which is a week-long event where they're putting on a whole schedule of items, and she'll be talking about Evernote as a productivity tool so that you can kind of prepare for your next year and the next decade. And so just you can go ahead and attend. It's free, and obviously it's currently virtual, so it's online, so you can attend it even though the event is normally based in London. So if folks are interested, you can go ahead and jump out there. So with that, in closing, I want to just make sure folks know how to keep in touch with you all. Julie, where can people keep in touch with you? And thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Really easy because my website is my name, juliebestry.com. On Facebook, it's my business name, so it's facebook.com/bestresultsorganizing. But you can find All of my various Pinterest and LinkedIn and everything directly from juliebestry.com.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being on the show again.
And letting me talk about planners.
You're welcome back anytime to talk about planners. Absolutely, Julie. All right. Penny, where can folks find you and keep in touch with your work?
Well, they can reach me at pennysKeynote.com. That's PENNYSKEYNOTE.com. And there's a fun distraction quiz there too that they could get access to find out whether, what your productivity profile is, if you're a squirrel or a time zombie.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being on the show, Penny.
Thanks. Bye.
Wonderful. And so Penny Zenker and Julie Bestry on the show, and that brings us to the close of this episode, folks. If you so we covered the productivity news this week. Thank you, Augusto Pinaud, everybody.
Thank you. Just to remind you that the ability to destroy the planet is insignificantly next to the power of the Force.
That is a reference to Star Wars, clearly. So for those of you who are aware, we are on Twitter, as well as you can visit our website. Please let us know if there's a story we missed. You can go to our contact page, which is anythingbutidle.com. You can tweet, and we have our DMs open on that Twitter profile, which is at anythingbutidle. If you have comments, questions, feel free to head over to our contact page as well. While you're there on anythingbutidle.com, you'll find our show notes, machine-generated transcript. So those have the links to what we've talked about, our new tools of the week, as well as those from our panelists. Sometimes we add extra stories or any other context-type items that are available for you. If you've been watching the live stream, feel free to hit the thumbs up icon. That helps us grow our personal productivity viewership. And if you are listening in your favorite podcast app, feel free to go ahead and rate or review us. That, of course, also allows us to grow our listening community. And so with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us here for Anything But Idle this week. And so take care, and here's to your productive life.